Okay, great. All right, so that's just a little bit of our overview there. So who is GAO? We are known as the Congressional Watchdog, and what that means is we are a nonpartisan, independent organization that advises Congress on how to make the government work better. Our work covers the full breadth of federal activity. A good rule of thumb is that if federal dollars are involved, GAO may weigh in. And the primary way in which we add value is through our reports. And our reports typically look at a federal program or a set of programs, and we'll spend about a year reviewing those programs, and then at the end of that year, we'll issue a report summarizing our findings. And some of those reports include recommendations to the federal agencies that we've reviewed with suggestions on how to make those programs work better. That's the bulk of our work. Some of our work looks at outlining policy options, but the bulk of our work is performance reviews. As a part of our work, we of course meet with the federal agencies that administer the programs that we review, but in order to get a real sense of how those programs are functioning, we need to talk to the people on the other end of the situation. So we meet with individuals, organizations, and tribes to get a sense of how those federal programs are doing from their perspective. And that input is invaluable to how we do our work, but we do want to be clear, our focus is squarely on the federal entities and the federal programs. When we talk to tribes, we never review tribe activity, we would never audit tribes. Our focus is squarely on the federal entities. If you're interested in learning more about us, you can check us out on our website, gao.gov. All of our publicly available reports are there, along with the recommendations that we've issued to the various entities that we've audited.
First of all, it is so good to be here again. I have really enjoyed saying hi to some of you that I've met before, meeting new people, hearing what your experiences has been as you are in the thick of trying to implement TBCP projects and as you are considering applying for the next round. So I just wanted to say thank you for having us here and for sharing with us what is going on for you. So in terms of why we're specifically here, Mikey did a great job about sharing who GAO is and how we're sort of involved in the federal space. But the real reason that we came to this event right here is because of this law. So this is an excerpt from the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And I thought I was going to have the biggest law of wall of words legislation, and then I saw NTIA's slide. So they actually did have more legislation on the board. But in that whole act that created the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, Congress did write a provision that GAO would need to review the program on an ongoing basis. Now that's not all that unusual. In the same act, there was another program for public-private partnerships with small communities. So we're also reviewing that, so it's not like we're singling out tribes, but sometimes when Congress creates programs, they require us to review it. So I didn't want to break the law, so I'm reviewing the program. We can do our reports straight to Congress, so sometimes we'll give a briefing, and that might not be publicly available, but we do also issue public reports. So this is the front page. We don't really have exciting reports because we're feds, but this is the front page of the report that we issued on the early part of the program. So when I was here in March, I shared some takeaways about that report, and we're happy to talk about it. But our review of TBCP didn't stop when we published that report. We had to continue to review TBCP. So we are working on a new review. That review is looking at the post-awards grants management process. How is NTIA doing now that they've announced most but not all of the awards? What is your experience with EAs? What is your experience with the reporting requirements? Now that you're in the thick of it, how is it going? Also, we're looking at equitable distribution grants. It's a really unique aspect of the TBCP program, and we want to make the public and Congress aware of how that's playing out. We're also looking at project sustainability. As we've been here in the past, we've heard that that is a big issue that is on a lot of people's minds. So we are looking for people's thoughts on that. We're looking at what NTIA has done to support project sustainability. Now, as we've been doing this work, we've been doing it in a number of ways. We've spoken with NTIA, we've done some site visits, so we've been out there in the field. We were out there in Oklahoma. We've been to Alaska. We couldn't see everybody in Alaska or Oklahoma, but we did meet with several tribes. And we're doing Zoom interviews so that we can get a broad swath of thoughts on these issues. But we also did a spin-off project. So when I was here back in March, you may have remembered I came up here and did my spiel, and then I came up a little bit later and I said, if y'all have received or expect to receive equitable distribution grants, we'd like to hear from you. So one of the things that we heard when we were here was from people who were in that position, and they wanted feedback. There was a gentleman that stood up there and said, how can we know why we were not fully funded and why we got this equitable distribution instead? So we did something rather unusual for GAO. We did a really short, because our reports are usually long, and quick product that looked particularly at equitable distribution. So when we're talking about equitable distribution, we're talking about applicants that had applied for more than $500,000. Maybe they applied for $5 million, $10 million, $50 million. But NTIA looked at that. They said, you have a good application. You passed merit review, but we don't have enough money to fund everybody. There was $5 billion in request. And so you are going to get this equitable distribution award. So when we looked at it, we've been keeping a close look at the awards as they've come out. At the end of July, of the 191 awards that had been announced, about 30% or 56 of them were equitable distribution grants. So I put that up there just so that y'all know kind of when we're talking about this subset of awardees, how many there are. So what did we do for this short little report? So we did a couple of things. As we went through and did our interviews for the ongoing project that I talked about earlier, we also asked about this. Are you in a position where you might get an equitable distribution grant? And if so, what's your experience been? We also had conversations. I came up here and said, come talk to us. So at this event back in March, we were hearing people's experiences with this element of the program. And the third thing that we did is we did a really quick pulse survey is what we called it. So we did what we could, we networked, and we said, we want to hear from people who think they might be in this boat. And we put out a survey, so that's like the survey that we sent out. Some of y'all participated in that, and I appreciate that. So as we did this, a really strong theme emerged, and that theme was the importance of feedback. We heard people say, we want to be able to improve our application for the second round. If we don't know why we weren't fully funded, how can we do that? We heard people say it was expensive and time consuming, like we heard here, to apply for this program. Should we, based on our experience in the first program, decide to apply? We also heard that because of the time and expense that can go into applying for this grant, as well as other grants, we want to know whether we should be applying for other ones. And that's not something that NTIA can necessarily tell you, but with feedback, that might be something that could inform your strategy of how to approach other funding opportunities. And we also heard people say, we would be more confident in this program if NTIA were able to articulate to us why we fell on one side or the other of getting a full award. So that is what we heard from those people that took the time to speak with us. Now, we also talked with NTIA because we're not going to talk with, awardees only. We're going to talk with the agencies that is administering the program. So they gave us a few reasons why they decided to approach this the way that they did. And the first one is that NTIA was not required to provide feedback. They said there was no law, there was no regulation, and the Commerce guidance did not have a requirement. Because this element of the program is really unique. There aren't a lot of programs that say, you can apply for this, and we'll give you this, and we'll consider you successful. So we agree with them. There was not a law or a regulation or the manual that said you have to give feedback. But when we looked at our work on managing broadband grant programs, we had identified as a leading practice providing feedback for the reasons that we just talked about. It is important. We looked at other broadband grant programs and saw that it was a leading practice. So we would say to NTIA, even though it's not required, there are some things that you should do even if they're not required by law. They also talked about how there are changes between the first funding round and the second funding round. And I think NTIA did a really good job of describing what they are. So maybe feedback on the first round might not be entirely applicable. Okay, sure. But we do think that as NTIA is providing technical assistance for that second round, they have the opportunity to provide feedback to these applicants that could aid them in improving their applications. They also talked about staffing challenges, and I know that this does not come as a surprise to anybody. We've talked to a number of awardees and applicants that say, look, we understand that NTIA is kind of, I think they say, building the plane while they're flying it. So we understand that that's been a big challenge. We would say that as NTIA helps applicants improve their applications, it'll be easier on the back end reviewing those applications. People might self-select out. They might say, you know what, maybe this program isn't for us. And then NTIA doesn't have to do that carrying as much. So based on our work and our conversations with awardees and NTIA, we issued a report. That's the front page of our report. I did send out an email last week, so some of y'all might have gotten that. And we made a recommendation to Department of Commerce that they make sure that the administrator of the NTIA work to provide feedback. And that can be as part of technical assistance. We think that it should be constructive enough so that it can help applicants improve their application for the second round. We also think that it should make clear why it is that some applicants fell on one side of that and why some fell on the other side of that. So we're happy to talk with you about our findings. If you would like a copy of that report, you can look it up right here. You can stop by our table. We're happy to talk about that. The other thing that I want to leave you with is we're here to hear your story. We want to hear, particularly circling back to the beginning when I was talking about our ongoing study, what is your experience with NTIA and the post-award process? What is your experience with EAs? What is your experience with the reporting process? What are some highs? What are some lows? And we also are interested in your thoughts on the second NOFO. For you, those of you who have participated in the first round, what do you think about the changes that NTIA has made? What difficulties do you foresee? What things do you think are really good? And for those of you that have not participated, what are your questions and where do you think NTIA can support you? So please take time to stop by our table. We also, I guess, my one ask in addition to what is here is that when we reach out to tribes, it is really helpful for us to know the right people to talk to. So I can go on BIA's leadership directory and I can pull down a name and I can Google your tribe and I can try to figure it out. But if I know who cares about broadband, and those are the people in this room, I have a better chance of speaking with the people who want to tell their stories and who want to share their perspectives. So that's why we have a sign-up sheet on our table. That's why we're here today. I appreciate your time, and I'll ask Godfrey, do I have time for a question or no? One question, if there's any. Yes, gentleman in the back in the blue.
Adam has with Rabbit Communications. Equitable distribution, that was actually the Booby Prize. That's what I consider it. And the tribe I helped with their application got the Booby Prize. And it was one of the tribes that was concerned about getting feedback. So in just reading your report, what's not clear to me is whether or not NTIA is going to sit down with the folks who got the equitable distribution and give them feedback on their original application that was not awarded, like now, because feedback on round 2 won't be very helpful because we don't know that there's going to be a round 3. So I think that's your recommendation, and has NTIA responded to that? Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that question and that opportunity to clarify. Also, I thought that I had heard every euphemism for this. I had heard door prize and consolation prize and some other less polite terms, but booby prize was a new one, so thank you for that. So we have had conversations with NTIA, and our view is that A debriefing like what you're talking about, a sit-down conversation, would be great if there were time for everybody. But we also think that there's an opportunity in the course of NTIA providing technical assistance in preparation for the second round of funding to provide that feedback. And it might be general feedback. So it might be, in some of these webinars, they might say, there are some of y'all who received this equitable distribution grant, and here's how we decided who would fall on this side or the other. So we do think that there's an opportunity to provide that constructive feedback as part of the technical assistance in advance of the second round, rather than, okay, at the end of the second round, we'll have a conversation about that. So I hope that's responsive. Okay, do you want to? Yeah, sure. I don't know if God.
I mean, I'm here. Let's not pretend I didn't hear what I just asked. I have no problem talking to any of you. If anyone wants to have a conversation about what that looks like and why you weren't funded, I mean, the simple answer is we don't have enough money. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with your applications. And that's been the most difficult. We shared this with GAO. Like, how do you go into a room and tell people, hey, you're poor, but you're not poor enough? You know, you're needy, but you're not needy enough. Those are the things that we've had to deal with. But I have absolutely no problem. If anyone wants to have a conversation, please send me an email. We will put together some time to chat with you. If we're going to be in your area, we will do it in person. There's no reason that we can't sit down and talk about that. That is also why we created all of the template documents, to make that a little bit easier for you guys, so you're not trying to dig and peck and figure out what you do and where you go next. So I hope that that's helpful. I'm not here to hide from the questions. I'm in the room. I have no problem stepping aside with you individually and saying, you know, give me your information. I'll schedule time next week or the week after, or whenever you guys are ready to have that conversation.
All right, thanks, Margaret. All right, thanks so much, and look forward to chatting with you.
Rebecca, thank you guys. I appreciate it.